Welcome to the Breakdown with INFB. I'm your host, Heidi Gant. As harvest is wrapping up in Indiana, farmers are finding out how well their crops performed this growing season while also starting to make plans for next year. As we all know, in agriculture, soil health is the essential foundation of everything we grow. So it's the perfect time to talk about Indiana Agriculture Nutrient Alliance, also known as IANA. IANA is dedicated to keeping Indiana at the forefront of proactive nutrient management and soil health practices that improve farm viability and ultimately reduce nutrient loss to water. So today we're talking to IANA's Executive Director, Ben Wicker, and Technical Assistant Specialist, Hans Schmitz. Welcome, Ben and Hans, to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All
Thank
right.
you much.
Yeah, great. So, obviously, well, Ben, let's just start with you. What's kind of your background? How did you make it to IANA? What brought you here?
Sure. So I have been working with fertilizers and manures pretty much my entire professional career. So grew up on a farm in East Central Indiana and still actively involved in that operation. We're a diversified row crop and livestock operation here in Rush County. But went to Purdue, got my degree in agronomy, and right out of school started working directly with farmers, soil testing, developing nutrient management plans, and trying to help them figure out, how to best, maximize their production, but also manage their fertilizer costs. Um, Went into the public sector or the organizational side of the world about 10 years ago and spent some time with our state pork producer association, Indiana Pork, doing some producer outreach with them. Spent some time with the Nature Conservancy doing some outreach in the agricultural community there as well, until the opportunity to really help worked as the formation of the Ag Nutrient Alliance was started and have been in that role since its inception back in 2018.
So, Ben, talk about that. Why was IANA formed and how was it formed?
Sure. So IANA was formed really out of several years of informal collaboration between a lot of the partners that make up the alliance today, and it really started and stemmed, as a response for agriculture's need to be proactive in the water quality space. So when you look at Indiana, you know, um, we drain to two major basins across the state. So about 80% of the state, the majority of us, ultimately our waters end up, either in the Ohio or through the Wabash River to the Mississippi River, which drains into the Gulf. Up in the very northeast corner of the state, those waters drain towards the Great Lakes, and both of those have water quality challenges that are driven by excess nutrients. Nitrogen in the case of the Gulf, excess phosphorus in the Western Lake Erie Basin. And agriculture is not the only source of nutrients to those basins, but with agriculture being the largest land use, people ask the questions of, well, what are you doing to reduce nutrient loss off of your landscape? Because we deal with these inherently leaky systems to where, we know we can have nitrogen loss. We know we lose, phosphorus through sediment and dissolve phosphorus as well. And so we needed to make sure that agriculture was at the table to as a part of those discussions, but then also that we could show what progress was happening. And so for several years before IANA's formation, partners like Indiana Farm Bureau, our commodity organizations, corn, pork, beef, dairy, had all been around the table partnering with our conservation partners as well to see what agricultural strategies and what efforts can take place. In 2018, those efforts were really formalized, led by Indiana Farm Bureau, along with the other agricultural partners, to work together with Indiana NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Services, to form up the Ag Nutrient Alliance. And our focus is really to make sure how can we empower farmers, to improve that nutrient use efficiency because fertilizers and manures are essential, right? We need to have those in order to be as productive and ultimately as sustainable as we can on all of our acres. Um, but we need to manage those in a way that reduce those downstream and off farm impacts. But there's also an economic case to this as well, right? Lost nutrients, can result in it's economic loss to us on our farms as well. But how can we work together to improve that efficiency, enhance our soil health, that ultimately protect this water quality? And can we do that in a way that we can, as an alliance, the 14 different partners, from ag and conservation world that make up the alliance, to speak consistently about these sustainable, proven practices that are going to drive success on the farm, but then also have these downstream and natural resource protection effects that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's great. So sounds like a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and Hans, I'd like to move to you, which beautiful background you have there if you're watching this on YouTube. So you're coming to us literally from the field. So Hans, talk about what your role is at IANA, and how you came to be involved.
Well, sure, yeah. So, just to speak about my location, I'm currently at a farm in Perry County that is analyzing the use of Asian carp as a fertilizer, um, part of a sustainable ag research and education grant. Um, so that explains what's behind me here. One of the fields that you see is actually the field that's in the program. But I came to IANA about a year ago. I've known Ben for over half of my life now. And Ben called back in September last year and said, "Hey, we need a little bit of technical assistance, expertise, and outreach expertise. Would you be interested?" And said, "Absolutely." So on the ground here, IANA is a administrator for the Farmers for Soil Health program, which is in the Advancing Markets for Producers program through the USDA. And so we help oversee that program statewide. Um, it's been an interesting year for that program, and it's going to be interesting to see how it moves forward as well, but it's moving forward. Also, we administer the 4R Nutrient Management Certification Program for the state of Indiana. And so those two programs are pretty technical and have a lot of moving components. And especially in the last year, both have been changing constantly. But we also want to make sure that producers with nutrient management needs get answers. And if there are programs, private or governmental, that can provide incentives to farmers for our nutrient management, we want to keep our eyes on those and be able to communicate that to any producer who may be in.
That's great. So you mentioned the 4R program. Can one of you go into a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So when you think about, kind of our foundational, principles that we stick to, I guess, through the Ag Nutrient Alliance, it really is, looking at the 4 R's of nutrient management paired with those principles of soil health that you mentioned. So, for background, the 4 R's of nutrient management is a framework, and the 4 R's are make sure anytime you're utilizing fertilizers and manure that you're considering the right source in the right place at the right time with the right rate. So really these kind of key decision making, key concepts, right? That every farm and anyone who's utilizing, you know, nutrients, on their farm or anywhere really is considering when making those decisions. And so out of that, we partnered several years ago with the Agribusiness Council of Indiana, another one of our IANA partners, in the development of a 4R program here in Indiana. And what that is a certification program that's really geared to, what we broadly term nutrient service providers, but more commonly thought of as ag retailers or ag, crop consultants, that deliver, nutrient recommendations to farmers, that make those nutrient applications for farmers, and then also help with the record keeping and maintenance of those pieces. It involves a third party audit that goes through, the training, recommendation, application, and documentation records, that they maintain to make sure that they're following best practices for those uses of fertilizers and manures, but then also that they're providing, up-to-date education, both internally for their staff, and externally to the farmers as well. Because as with all these, different topics around, there's ever-changing science and ever-changing information and new products that come online. And so really a way to for those nutrient service providers, to communicate back to their farmer that they're doing the right thing, that they're making the best recommendations, based on the best science that's available for those farmers, and that they're really having, the interest of, all parties involved to make sure that we're using those fertilizers and manures as efficiently as possible.
Great. So, and then do you want to talk about some of your other kind of pillars of what you do, the soil health and water management, and what you tend to try to educate people on? What are those that a lot of the resources that you have around soil health and water management? Do you want to talk about those?
Sure. I'll let Hans talk a little bit about some of our soil health efforts. He referenced the Farmers for Soil Health, but he can also talk a little bit more, probably broadly, about the broader technical assistance and the expertise he brings to that table for sure.
All right. So, um, first, our motto: viable farms, healthy soil, clean water. Viable farms is the first of those principles. And so we want to make sure that farms, especially in this economy, remain viable, but also can keep the soil health as high as possible on their ground and keep the water around them clean. And so we know that there are a large suite of practices that have some effect on nutrients. One of them is cover crops. Cover crops can scavenge nutrients, legumes can produce nitrogen. So we do have the Farmers for Soil Health program that incentivizes farmers with a per acre payment to plant cover crops if they have not before, or even if they have, there's a lesser payment through that program. We also have a lot of other programs on our radar. The Soil and Water Outcomes Fund, ADM's Regenerations Program, Cargill's Region Connect Program. And we're in constant communication with the administrators of those programs to make sure that we know when enrollment is open, and we can respond to farmers who might have an interest in adopting a practice that may or may not be covered by some of those programs. So it really goes back to the 4 R's, and, right rate, right source, right place, right time. There are a bunch of different ways to accomplish goals through those on farm. And if a producer has any questions about how to accomplish those goals, we want to get a farmer to the right person to get those answered.
Great. So, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges or opportunities that you see for farmers in nutrient management? Do you find that there's a number of people who don't want to try anything new? Or do you see it's pretty easy to convince someone to apply what you are educating them about?
So in my mind, in a lot of ways, the greatest challenge is also the greatest opportunity. And it's really poignant right now when you look at the economic outlook, where we have crop prices have been moving in a direction we don't like to see, while input costs, and fertilizers amongst those have at a minimum remained steady, if not continued to increase. And so that need to be as efficient with every dollar, and that need to be as efficient as we can with every pound of nutrients that we're utilizing on our farm has never been more important. Um, and so from a case building standpoint, that's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
And so we can offer some, there's some pretty easy ways to start when you think about how 4Rs might apply on my farm. And it's really about building a plan and understanding, how all these different pieces interact and being able to base your decisions upon that. And so doing some simple things like taking soil tests so you know what the nutrient levels on your farm are, really examining your nitrogen management plan and considering the rate, source, time, place. If you're a guy that's just doing it all in one shot, maybe look at what your opportunities to split that application might be. Considering, the use of stabilizers or other products, right, that may help extend the risk of that. Because we don't necessarily see resistance to the concepts, right? But the challenge can be is where do I go for the best information and how do I know what to trust? And
Right.
that's really where we're trying to leverage the strength of the alliance. And that partnership is as we talk about what practices may work and what may be effective, a farmer can have confidence knowing that each of the different partners have looked at, vetted, and agreed that this is the best information that we can put out for farmers. And it's not just something that's been kind of glossed over as they're looking to make those decisions. Because the real challenge is these are complex systems. Um, it's complicated to look at. We joke, with both farmers and consultants and researchers alike, right? Well, if you could just tell us the exact amount of nitrogen to put on a corn crop and at what time, that would be simple, but
Yeah. But
it's
it's
not that
different for
easy.
everybody. Yeah, it's
And
different.
Mother Nature is going to always drive in every year, right? What those
Yeah.
decisions make. But applying the best new science and the best practices, that are evolving, get us closer, in an incremental fashion as we move kind of stepwise to that. And so making sure farmers are staying on the forefront of that information, making sure that it's been vetted and supported, by a broad collaboration like the Ag Nutrient Alliance, can help give some confidence and help make sure they have that information.
That's great. Hans, anything to add to that? Any big challenges or opportunities that you see for farmers in these trying times, I guess you could say?
Well, as Ben said, it really does start with a soil sample, whether that be a traditional soil test or one of the soil health tests that are out there to get baseline knowledge that you can add to yield maps and other layers of information. We've made it 22 minutes without bringing up biologicals, so maybe it's time to mention that now. There are a lot of companies entering that space, and uh, we're hoping that the science behind some of the products will get there at some point, but you really cannot attend a fertilizer conference without a lot of biological representatives being there. So that may be a future opportunity once we start to see field test results and multi-year field test results come into play, which some of the companies are getting there.
Okay. So you mentioned we're 22 minutes in. So we've covered a lot of ground though in 22 minutes. So I do want to make sure that before we leave, we talk about what farmers can do now. What's the action step? You mentioned a couple of easy things that they can do. Where do they go for more information? Ben, what's some easy steps that farmers can take?
Sure. So looking for the information, they can visit our website at www.inagnutrients.org, where we house, some resources covering, basic 4R concepts to some planning documents to some other pieces for them to consider as they're looking, as well as some resources on soil health, cover crops, other pieces as well for those that are looking to, enhance their management or add some of these different practices into in their operation. They can look for resources and experts. Certainly, we stand here, particularly having Hans on board as well, to help answer questions, so they can reach out if they have questions about, particular practices, about how things might fit within their operation, programs and opportunities. Like Hans said, there's a whole world of assistance and other things that can be available to farmers, but it can be a really gnarly web trying to figure out what's going to work best for you. So we can help connect you to the right resources. If they want to look a little more closely to home, if they don't have a relationship with an agronomist, a certified crop advisor, or someone that they can trust, that's a great resource as well to tap into, to build that kind of baseline of information. And they're typically the ones that can also provide a lot of those services that we talked about, whether it's taking the soil test, developing that nutrient plan, for your farm, and figuring out again how to maximize that fertilizer pound, and fertilizer dollar most efficiently, to maintain, as Hans referenced, that viable farm, healthy soil, and clean water.
It's great. Hans, anything to add there?
I just want to shamelessly say, get involved in Farm Bureau, come to the ag gathering, come see us at the ag gathering in December.
Man, it's almost like I paid you to say that. I love it. That's great. Thank you both for being here. Obviously, Farm Bureau finds a lot of value in what you all do, or else we wouldn't be partners. So I think this is a great stepping stone. If you've never heard of IANA before, if you aren't involved in what you all do, please check them out, and go to their website for more information. Thank you both again. Hopefully, we can do a little deep dive into something else in the future. But we will have more information in the show notes, with links that you can click on to learn more. But otherwise, thank you, Hans. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you for having us on, and thank you to Indiana Farm Bureau for being one of the original and strongest partners of this effort.
Been a real pleasure.
Thank you. If you enjoyed our conversation today, make sure to subscribe to The Breakdown with INFB, and even rate and review us to let us know how we're doing. For more information, visit www.infb.org/podcast.